Now, most of us don't notice the abandoned or rundown houses around us, but there is a group of people who spend their spare time devoted to exploring and memorising these places. They feel it's pretty important. They're called urban explorers. They're a community of people from all walks of life who fear that the disappearance of Australian history will happen unless they preserve some of these buildings. They chat through online forums. They collectively discover abandoned places and document them with videos and photos, trying to appreciate them in all their dilapidated glory before the land is possibly snapped up by developers and before you know it, there's a new development there. Now, Craig is one of the people that is part of this group. He explores and documents abandoned places. He has a YouTube channel, Devil's Donuts, and he's on the line to talk to us. Craig, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. So, how long have you been doing this?
We've been doing it for several months now.
Yeah?
I've been wanting to do it, but cost the money of getting the camera to go out and do it, but finally got a camera and got out and started doing it.
Yeah.
I was doing it before I put the stuff up on YouTube, but I decided I'd share it with everyone.
And your main objective is to document these places and try and find out a little bit about the history of them before they fall under the developer's hammer.
Yeah, I'm in a group that's around my suburb and Brisbane history and that, and there's a lot of development been going around and people are saying, oh, that used to be my house, now it's unit. So it's good to go out and capture houses that are there and soon won't be.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there's a lot of landmarks too that have disappeared over the years, and as you have suggested, if you're part of a historic group or you go on, historical websites, that's about all that's left of some of those iconic places that used to be.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that go out and take photos, but I thought I'd take a video and walk through it with people and just remembrance or just show the history of it.
How do you find these places? Do you just see them and you put them up or chat about them with you on your forums?
No. On the forums, people don't give out locations just to keep the vandals away.
Okay.
And to preserve it as much as they can. We don't go, if there's, say, private property or it's fenced off or keep out signs, we don't go into them. You can mainly find them if they're overgrown. Most of the time vandals have been there, so it gives it away.
Yes.
I think you just need to be knowing what you're looking for and be able to see what you're looking for.
I guess some of those sites you'd have to be a bit careful too, wouldn't you?
You do. I mean, I haven't posted up yet. There's a video I got and I found two houses and there was no way I was going to go in the houses. But I did document it on the outside and the yard and everything. But there was no way I was going to go inside.
I believe down in Brisbane, I think it was yesterday, there's a development happening underneath the Story Bridge there.
Yeah.
And they found a couple of World War II bunkers.
Yes.
So what's the strangest thing you've found?
Oh, I haven't been out doing it for that one to find anything that good yet. But yeah.
How many of you involved? In your group, how many people are doing this do you do it through the day or weekends? When do you do it? When you've got a bit of spare time?
Yeah, it's whenever I've got spare time. It's just me and my mate, but there's a whole heap of people that do it. They put up on the forum sometimes to go out in groups and do it. But
how many in your group?
There's at least 10, at least. It all depends on what time.
And do you know if this is happening in other parts of the world?
It is. That's actually where I got the inspiration from, is by watching people from America and Canada that put it up on YouTube. Well, that's a great idea. I can't think of any other place to put it, really.
And you call yourselves the Urbex community, is that right? Urbex community.
Urbex, yeah. Urbex or urban, yeah.
Okay.
Urban.
So what about, have you considered, you mentioned if there's a fence up or it's locked, you don't go in. So if it's an old abandoned service station, for instance, or an old abandoned, if you're in a country town that's an abandoned hotel, you walk in and have a look around. How do you go legally there with the possibility of being
I asked the police about this,
Yes.
and they said that, if there's a wall missing, window missing, a door missing, and you go past that invisible barrier, that's break and enter. But on the other side, they also said if you got a camera and you're only taking photos and that, they shouldn't give you a fine or charge you for trespassing.
Well, I guess you've got the evidence there. If they say you're doing something, you can say, this is what I'm doing, here's my pics.
Yeah, but if you've gone past that invisible barrier, they can still do you for break and enter. But we're not vandalising. We don't tell anyone where the locations are. We don't like the vandals.
No, so all you're trying to do is preserve history, and you're history buffs, and you're trying to, I suppose, document these places because soon they won't be in existence, possibly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they'll be gone soon.
And are there other areas of southern Queensland you're doing, or are you focusing on one area, or do you have, for instance, here on the Sunshine Coast, do you have a group here, a group in Brisbane, a group, say, in Toowoomba or the Gold Coast?
Well, each person is their own individual. It's up to them if they want to team up with other people.
Yes.
Some do. They share locations, but I don't know how they work. I don't like to be sharing my locations.
I would imagine in some of the smaller country towns in the areas I've mentioned, or around the areas I've mentioned, there'd be plenty of history that would be untapped, waiting to be documented. Yes,
there is. But unfortunately, it's a few hours drive or a day or two drive. But there's videos. There's other videos of people putting up like me in Brisbane and around Queensland and that.
Yeah.
They've got locations where it's easy to find out where those locations are, and if you know what you're looking for and know how to do it. But I'd like to go see those locations as well. So I'll eventually get there. I'll eventually run out of.
And we can see where you've been too, can't we, by visiting a YouTube channel, can we?
Yes, you can.
And that's
Devil's Donuts.
Devil's Donuts. All right, well, we'll do that. Look, thanks for having a chat to it. It's a rather unique pastime you've got there.
It is. It was part of passion. I mean, if you like taking photos and videoing, I'm not going to say I recommend it for everyone, but if it's a passion for you, go ahead and do it.
Well, you'd have to know a bit about what you're doing because, as I mentioned, you could probably injure yourself if you don't know what you're doing.
That's right. I mean, common sense comes into it.
Yeah.
You don't just run into a house that's got no flaws.
No, all right. Well, look, nice talking with you.
Thank you. Nice one to you too.
Good on you. That's Craig. He obviously doesn't want to be identified because in some instances, I guess, he could be considered as trespassing. We'll find out what the law of the land is on that. But they're called urban explorers, a community of people from all walks of life who, as I mentioned in the introduction, fear that part of Australia's history is disappearing before our eyes, and some of it's significant, some of it's probably not. Is probably insignificant, but if they feel it's worthwhile documenting, they go in there, take a few pics, and then they've got a record of it. And as you mentioned, or as Craig mentioned, you can check it out on his YouTube channel, Devil's Donuts. You're with ABC Sunshine Coast on this Friday morning, heading into what looks like a fantastic weekend. Now, if you were just listening to the program, you would have heard that fascinating chat that I had about the world of the urban explorers, known as Urbex. I was talking to Craig there. Now, they're people who spend their spare time exploring abandoned buildings to document their historical value with photos and videos. But, as I mentioned to Craig, and he did mention that if there is a fence or if it's boarded up or locked up, they don't go in. But even if it's not locked up and it's all open, how legal is all of this? And is it still possibly trespassing if the building has been entered and hasn't been entered for years, even though it might be open? Professor Pam O'Connor is the head of law at the University of the Sunshine Coast and joins me to have a discussion about this. G'day, Professor. How are you?
Good morning.
Nice to talk with you. I don't know. Go on, sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm very pleased to be here.
That's good. Now, I don't know whether you heard the discussion with Craig, but how does he stand if he's visiting those, what could be described as derelict buildings, in terms of trespassing?
Okay. Well, look, there's no general offence about being on land. There are offences of unlawfully entering and remaining on certain types of land, which include dwellings, the yards of dwellings, business premises, or premises used for business purposes, and the yards of such premises and also farms. So if he's entering those premises, even if he doesn't have any intent of committing an offence, then that would be an offence, and it's liable to a fine of up to $2,500. So a lot turns on the characterisation of the premises. So if something's derelict and might have once been used as a dwelling but has long since ceased to be and is no longer fit to be, arguably that's not an offence of entering or remaining in a dwelling.
No, well, I guess he's just slipping in to take a few photographs so he can document the history of the site.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you feel that he's probably... is it a fine line there that he's walking?
Well, look, there's another offence which is basically burglary. So that's housebreaking with intent to commit an indictable offence. So somebody who's entering for the purposes of stealing or doing criminal damage or something of that kind. And, even entering through an open aperture such as a door or a window, if you're sort of finding a way into premises without doing damage, that could still be, it could still amount to breaking in. But for those more serious offences, the police would then need to show that there was the intent to commit a crime while on the premises. So it may be that, depending on what the nature of the premises are, if it's, say, a long abandoned house, and they're able to enter without doing any damage, there's no sign indicating that, forbidding people from entering the property, and they enter and they have no intent of committing any crime while on the premises, they're simply photographing or noting what they see, it may be that no offence is committed.
Yes, I guess in most instances they're looking at dilapidated buildings that aren't fenced off, that aren't locked up, or houses. And I guess if it's a building and it's open and they just slip in and take a couple of photographs, they're probably on reasonably safe ground.
Yes, I think particularly if they can argue that it's no longer used as a dwelling or business premises, or it's not currently used as a farm, because being on land generally is not an offence.
I don't know that they go into that area of farming properties, because they've obviously got to go across a fair bit of land in some instances to get to any houses. It's mainly dilapidated buildings that are sitting on the corner, and they just want to keep the history of the suburb or town alive, and they just take a few pics or videos, and they've got that YouTube channel. But I thought it's wise to just balance up the argument, because there might be some people listening to the program who are fascinated by what these explorers are doing and might want to get involved. And I thought we probably should get you on to just tell us what the law says, so they know what their what the potential pitfalls are.
Yeah. Well, I think certainly having evidence that that's all they're doing, and how they're using the information that they're obtaining, that for cultural values and so on, because they might have to explain it to the police if somebody observes them and calls the police. And if there's any evidence, or if the police suspected that somebody was on premises for the purpose of committing a crime such as criminal damage or theft or something of that sort, then the police might be considering burglary, even if they've just entered by climbing in a window that was already open. If
they did enter, an abandoned building and they were caught, what would their defence be? Would there, apart from just taking a few photographs to preserve the history of the suburb?
Well, I think they'd say... So there's two things here. It's also possible that the occupier of the premises, if there is one, could sue for damage, for trespass. That's a civil matter. But these are unoccupied premises.
Yeah, it's just a dilapidated old building.
That's really theoretical. The more likely occurrence is that somebody would observe them and call the police, and they'd have to explain to the police what they were doing. The question then is it one of those categories of building or premises where it is an offence to enter or remain unlawfully, and arguably it's not if it's not currently being used for any purpose, if it's just abandoned. Also, I think they could argue, there might be an argument that they're not on the premises unlawfully. It's a bit of a grey area, but there are reasons why people can be lawfully on premises. For example, it's not unlawful to enter through a gate and walk up to the front door, knock on the door to speak to the occupier, or to enter in order to deal with a nuisance such as a fire or smoke or something that's coming from premises. So there are circumstances in which it would not be unlawful to be on the premises. But I think the better argument here is it's not the kind of premises that are protected by law from people entering on them. Because it's not currently in use for any purpose. It's not a dwelling. It's not being used as business premises. It's not a farm. It's just left in that the category of other land.
So it's more than likely going to be okay.
I would have thought it would be difficult to convict them.
Yeah, good. That's what we want to hear. All right. Look, thank you, Professor, for coming on, having a chat with us and clearing up any queries that might be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very
That's
much.
Professor Pam O'Connor, Head of Law at the University of the Sunshine Coast.